Welcome to Panels and Borders. I'm Dominic. So I guess by now you've heard the news that Spider-Man is being pulled out of the MCU by Sony. Apparently negotiations between Sony and Disney have seemingly broken down, and everyone's freaking out saying that Sony is now pulling Spider-Man out of the MCU and into their Venomverse that they're kind of setting up with that Venom movie. So, and the fans are split. I saw on Twitter a lot of fans are happy that he's leaving Disney, going back to Sony, because they don't like the Disney MCU version of Spider-Man. And a lot of MCU fans are mad and wanting to boycott Sony and stuff like that if they take Spider-Man out of the MCU. But I'll get to that in a moment. So what do I think of the news of Spider-Man being pulled out of the MCU? I don't think he's getting pulled out. That's my honest opinion. I don't think you're going to see Spider-Man leave the MCU anytime soon. I think this whole thing, because when the story came out, it said negotiations have broken down, and Sony released a statement saying that basically they put the blame on Disney, saying that Kevin Feige didn't have time to produce another Spider-Man movie because Spider-Man wasn't a character they had the full rights to. So they were going to have to go forward on their own. And, they kind of made it seem like, well, this is Disney's fault. And apparently Disney asked to have 50-50 of everything, and Sony said no, walked away. But I think by Sony making that public statement, I think that's like a bargaining tactic that they're going to use against Disney. And I don't think the talks are over, and it's just too much money on the line for Disney to let Sony walk away with Spider-Man. They've wanted Spider-Man for so long in the MCU. Fans have wanted Spider-Man in the MCU for a long time. And now they finally got him. And Spider-Man, when I was growing up for years and years, Spider-Man was the flagship Marvel character. He was like the face of Marvel. And then I kind of, for a while, it became Iron Man, it seemed like. And then now it's Captain Marvel. Well, that one, they really want to make Captain Marvel the flagship character of Marvel Comics and stuff like that. But when I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s and all that kind of thing, Spider-Man was like the universal symbol for Marvel. He was their flagship character. So they have their old flagship character back in one of their biggest characters, probably the most popular Marvel character, I would argue, is Spider-Man back in the MCU. They're not going to give him up that easily. So now, as for the split between fans, is Spider-Man better off in the MCU or is he better with Sony? Now, this is just my personal opinion. Right now, I think he's better off in the MCU. I think these last two Spider-Man movies, I've really enjoyed them. Homecoming and Far From Home. I thought they did the character justice, and I really liked them. And Marvel has a very solid record making superhero movies, and the Marvel Studios. I mean, even their flops are still pretty good. The ones that don't do that well are still pretty good, and they still make money, and they got it down to a science right now. Now, how long they can keep that train going, I don't know. People are kind of worried about the next phase, but we'll see. Where Sony doesn't have that track record with Spider-Man. There's a reason Spider-Man's in the MCU in the first place. I think people are forgetting that. It's because Sony dropped the ball big time with Spider-Man when they rebooted it and had Andrew Garfield come in and play Spider-Man, and those movies were horrible. I didn't like those Spider-Man movies. The best Spider-Man movies with Sony was the Sam Raimi ones that came out years ago. Like that first Spider-Man movie from 2002, that is still my number one Spider-Man movie. If I had to rank all the Spider-Man movies, that Sam Raimi Spider-Man, that's still number one. That would be number one. That's still my favorite Spider-Man movie. That's like one of my favorite superhero movies, is that original Sam Raimi Spider-Man film. So right now, me personally, I think he's better with the MCU. I think he would kind of get, if he goes back to Sony, he'll kind of get more what we had before with the Andrew Garfield stuff. I don't think it's going to work out. I think they'll end up I think they might get a few hits out, but I think in the long run, they'll end up dropping the ball on Spider-Man again, where I think they got a much better shot of keeping the popularity of the character up, and by having Spider-Man in the MCU. So so it's interesting news, but I don't think he's going to be at the MCU. That's just me. That's my opinion. I think you're still going to see the the Spider-Man movies being made and you're still going to see Spider-Man in the MCU, I do not think he's out. I think you'll see, I think they'll come back together. They'll hammer out something. There's too much money on the line. And I think personally, that's just my opinion, that I think he's better off in the MCU. But I mean, everyone's entitled to their own opinion. If you think he's better off with Sony, that's totally cool. That's, if you prefer that, that's cool with me. So that's everything I got to say in this video. Let me know what you think in the comments section, and I will see you at the next one. Thank you to all of my subscribers, and thank you for watching this video. And if you're new to the channel, like, subscribe, and share. And don't forget to hit the bell icon for notification when new videos are uploaded.